Hey guys, thanks for checking out the video on band saw. This is a Porter Cable 14-inch band saw. It's called the 14 inches in reference to the size of the deck. We actually have a 6-inch clearance here for our total blade exposure. This is called a band saw because the blade is just a big band, as you can see here. So this adjustment to expose the amount of the blade is just a knob in the back. And then ultimately, we want this to be as low as possible in relation to our material. This is just a guard that's going to keep our fingers away from this blade. Now, the bandsaw is the most dangerous tool in the shop. Not because it's inherently dangerous, because people get relatively complacent around it. It doesn't make a whole lot of noise. It's not very intimidating. So a lot of complacent injuries happen in association with this. Like many of our saws, there is a bevel on this. Now, this bevel is a little bit trickier than some of our other ones. So there is a kind of a star-shaped knob, and you just loosen that up. And then this bevel, it goes both ways, but only goes about 15 degrees this way, and then going up to 45 the other way. Now where it gets tricky is where you kind of have to rock it a little bit to get it in, to get it to lay over. So, but there it does go up to 45. Now, since this doesn't have any of those marking positions and it doesn't really have any kind of indicators whether you're back to level or not, a good thing to do is to take your speed square or another square and just line it up in relation to your blade. So you're going to drive this all the way up and put your speed square up next to it until you can get up to 90 degrees in relation to your blade. And then once you do, lock it down and you're good. As with any saw, we want to make sure that the saw is unplugged and the saw is turned off any time that we're manipulating the blade. So any type of adjustment you're going to make with that saw unplugged. So we're going to get this set to our material height, and we're good to go. Now, the band saw doesn't make as tight turns as the scroll saw does, but we can still make some of those circular cuts. Now, just like with the scroll saw, we are going to make some of those relief cuts in there to get that extra material out of the way as we're working. So, we're now ready to go ahead and unlock our saw. So, as with all of our tools, they are locked out. When you are ready to use this saw, you're going to grab a facilitator or a shop aid and ask for this key. In this particular case is number 7. As with all of our tools, we are going to lock this around the cable, put the lock back on, and then that way we're only really retaining the key. As always, mine goes in my back pocket. Okay, we're actually close enough to an outlet here, so this is going to go straight into an outlet. And now we're ready to go. Now this tool does have the same paddle switch similar to the one that we saw on our table saw. And since we just plugged it in, we're going to make sure that it's operational, keeping our material out of the way. And you can see this is not a loud saw. It's very easy to forget this saw is running, especially if you're wearing hearing protection or if it's very loud in here. It's easy to forget that this saw, how dangerous this saw really is. So one of the safety features this saw has is it actually has a key on the switch. So it just pulls straight out, and it's just a little plastic piece. And so if you're using the saw or if you're making an adjustment to this saw, it's impossible for this saw to turn on now. So whenever you're ready, you snap it back in and then it'll turn on. So now this saw is rotating downward, so that tooth direction is actually really important. So if ever you're putting a blade on, you need to make sure that the teeth are going in the right direction. And blade tension is important. If you're noticing that this blade is kind of wobbling or it doesn't appear very tight, there's actually an adjustment up here. So you just have to get a wrench and adjust this tension here. And then we'll get that good blade tension and your cuts will be good and clean. So I'm going to go ahead and make our relief cuts and show you those relief cuts, and then I'm going to go into to making our final cut. So there you see those relief cuts that go right up against that line. And then when I get into the saw, I'm just going to follow those lines and allow each one of those to come off. Now, one of the features of this saw that could be very helpful here, where I have a lot of excess material on this top, is a push. And we see this channel right here. And what this channel is specifically for is to use this tool. So this tool goes into that channel, and then this allows us to get a good cut in relation to the saw. So this channel is parallel to the blade, and we can actually make adjustments here by unscrewing this knob, and let's say we wanted a 45-degree angle, or whichever angle, and this goes up to 30 degrees, on our, actually what, 60 degrees on each side, and then we can use this to get a good even cut. So I can come in with this, turn on my saw, push all the way through and get a nice straight cut. And as you can see, this cut is good and perpendicular from the channel and the blade. Now we may not have a 90-degree corner here because I don't know what this starting point was. But now we can go ahead, clear out some of our material since our saw is off, get our push out of the way, and then we can continue cutting. So it's important to keep your blade speed up because that blade is passing through the material and it is generating friction. And if you look really closely, you can see where it's slightly darker in a couple places. That's where the blade spent enough time to actually scorch that material. The likelihood of you starting a fire is pretty small as long as you keep it moving, but you really don't want those discolored marks on your finished piece. But that can be easily fixed with sandpaper or paint. So that's how you operate the bandsaw. If you have any questions, make sure you find a facilitator, someone with more experience on that. If you don't, keep up the good work. Thanks.